Global Inequality, Canada versus Sudan. In this presentation, I will be comparing Canada and Sudan and explaining how a child who is born into Sudan may be at a disadvantage when it comes to growing up in the environment that they are born into. Sudan has been in the news in recent months due to the rising tensions the country is facing economically. On December 19, 2018, protests broke out in Sudan as a result of a steep increase in the price of bread. Escalating from these protests, the citizens of Sudan called for a resignation of the ruling dictator Omar al-Bashir, who had been in power for 20 years. The military forced al-Bashir out of government on April 11, 2019. Protests continue in Sudan, now with the pro-democratics and military clashing against each other. The number of injured civilians continues to rise, as well as the tension due to the country's unrest. Canada and Sudan seem quite similar when comparing population size. In Sudan, there are 42 million inhabitants, and in Canada, there are 37 million. However, once landmass is considered, the population differences becomes quite apparent. Canada is the second largest country in the world, while Sudan is ranked 16th largest country in the world. 80% of Canada's population lives in urbanized areas, where in Sudan, only 33% of the population lives in urban areas. A child in Sudan may not have access to as many opportunities as one in Canada because of this. Since many people are born into rural areas, they may have a limited education, leading to a limited job opportunity. This could cause them to struggle financially as they age, leading to a less fulfilled life. In Sudan, the fertility rate is 4.5 children on average per woman. In Canada, this rate is much lower at 1.5. Sudan's high rate has a couple underlying causes. In Sudan, women are viewed to be inferior to men. The women face a higher risk of sexual assault because of this, leading to a higher fertility rate. In Canada, there's more equality. Although there is still a risk of sexual assault, it is not nearly as high as Sudan's because of our modern society and judicial system. Access to modern contraception in Sudan is quite low at only 12%, while Canada's access is at 75%. The ability to access contraception in Sudan contributes to the high fertility rate. For a child born in Sudan to a family with many children, they may be at a disadvantage. This is because there may not be enough resources or money to give the child many opportunities to be healthy and grow as an individual. The infant mortality rates in Canada and Sudan is quite drastic. In Sudan, for every 1,000 births, there are 44 deaths of an infant. In Canada, there are only 5 deaths of an infant. Sudan has a high mortality rate because of a few factors. Disease is more prominent in Sudan, which put mothers carrying their child at risk of transmitting poor health to their baby. A newly born child also has a weakened immune system. Sudan also has ongoing war, putting infants at physical risk. A child born into this environment faces risk of not even living through infancy. In Sudan, the average age of death is 65, and in Canada, the average age of death is 82. Although these levels are both increasing gradually, Sudan's life expectancy still remains drastically lower than Canada's. The low age of death could stem from the high level of social unrest and war, and also from the prevalence of diseases and lack of resources. Sudan does not have the best healthcare as well. A report from UNICEF found that for every 10,000 people, there were only 3 doctors in Sudan. Children born into a country with such a low life expectancy have no choice but to face struggles as they age. These innocent children will be born into a country that will threaten their life with war, disease, and lack of resources like food or clean water. Between Canada and Sudan, there is quite a gap when it comes to education. In Sudan, majority of kids don't even make it to secondary school, and the amount that make it to tertiary education is very small, being only 17%, while in Canada, those who make it to tertiary education is at 67%. This could be linked to the high fertility rate and the kids having to take care of the other children in the family. It could also be linked to the fact that a lot of the work in Sudan is in the labor force, which doesn't require further education than primary school. Beyond that, there could just be an overall lack of access to education for some families. This lack of education will limit opportunities for a child growing up in Sudan. This could link back to the lower life expectancy, as a child with a lack of education may subject themselves to a more laborious workforce, which will be harder on their body and their physical health as they age. It could also lead to a higher fertility rate, which can put strain on a woman giving birth to many children. Children in Sudan are not given the tools of education to go and flourish with their literacy. They are not provided equal opportunities as those in Canada because of this.